Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I am extremely honored to have you on this show. I've read so much about you. I'm excited to dive right in.
Great. No pressure.
No pressure.
No
So,
pressure.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
I gave a little intro before the show, but if you could, in your own words, just kind of give us a little bit about how you got started in real estate, kind
Yeah.
of your genesis, and then we'll kind of
Okay.
go from there.
Sounds good. This will take half of the show. Okay. Because my path is not traditional. So I started originally in design school. So I was going to school for architecture. I was several years into architecture school and it just wasn't resonating. And I feel like, now that I've had an amazing college experience, college should be great. It should be what you think like the ideal components are of what you're going to do. And it wasn't resonating. It wasn't clicking. And I came back to Colorado to visit some friends. And when I was here, I met a really respected and renowned landscape architect. And I will be honest, I had no idea what landscape architecture was, didn't know it was a thing. And he invited me to his studio and I got to see, what they were doing and what they were working on. And I was like, this is it. This is what I've been missing, where architecture is amazing for so many reasons. And I love all my architect friends. And you get to create this one great, amazing space in the context of an environment. The landscape architecture piece gets to create the environment and kind of some of the community making pieces of how, we live in towns and cities. And so that to me was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I transferred with 0 credits transferring and started over in a 5-year program and graduated with a landscape architecture degree and did that for many, many years. And I ended up in a tract where I was doing a lot of really high-end luxury hospitality projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of my clients were like the Four Seasons, private resorts, things like that. And it was awesome. I loved it.
It's very unique.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah.
And, I was really early in my career and without even knowing it subconsciously, I was picking up all of these pieces from clients like the Four Seasons who understood brand very early, like way before any of us could talk about experiential development or creating brands around projects. It's you went into a Four Seasons, you knew you were at one, not because of the signage, but how you were greeted, the information they had about you, regarding past stays and what your, preferences were, the way it smelled. Now, every hotel has a proprietary
Curated.
smell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's perfect.
But it was really cool. And so, those were some of my early, clients. And then those same types of clients are what brought me over to the development world. So I like to say I was a good designer. But I was really good at managing clients and
Mm-hmm.
projects. And so I actually moved up pretty quickly in studios because I knew how to make money. And I think that's just because
That's pretty
I've been a
important.
hustler. Yeah. I have always hustled. I have always tried to figure out how to make money. My friends and I have joked. I was like, I was a layaway kid. I was babysitting and doing things to buy like bikes and dual cassette boom boxes,
I was about to say, what were
yeah,
some of your early
that one. Yeah.
no,
I bought a 10-speed bicycle and the dual cassette boombox so that you can like do the high speed dubbing when you were making mixtapes and stuff, that'll date me. People will know I'm over 40. Okay. But yeah, it was, I was always trying to figure out how to make money, how to get the things that I wanted. And so that just kind of came through like in how I actually worked in my professional career, right? It's like, I knew how to make money. So,
right.
And so those clients recognized that and saw that in me and took me over to the development side. So, that's how I got there. I later shored up, you learn there's 0 business classes and 0
Yeah.
finance classes in design school. And so I did get my master's and I concentrated in finance and capital markets so I could shore that piece of one, just my base knowledge up, but that would also kind of make sense on paper. So
Awesome. So
yeah.
you transitioned into development under a more traditional development firm.
Yeah.
More so?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I mean, very traditional in that I was working for a really high net worth individual who had a real estate platform within their private equity business. And so I was
Mhm.
on the real estate side, but he was well invested in multiple different business platforms. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And how long were you there?
So in development, I went between like a couple different private equity firms, as I believe is totally normal. So if people are out there changing around in private equity, I think it's great because it gets you a lot of different vantage points. So before my last role, I was probably within that realm for like 5 or 6 years, and then my last role, I was there for 6 years, which was I was the head of commercial development for a large national development firm.
Wow. Wow. And then I guess this question is more of kind of your first foray into development. What made you take that leap? Was it just that drive and they saw that in you and you figured out, hey, maybe this is really what I wanted to do? Or
Yeah. Uh, so okay, well, I guess there's multiple parts.
yeah.
One, it was 2009. And so a lot of my, I mean, I had laid off some friends, right? And so, I mean, the industry was really kind of trying to reimagine what it was going to look like. And service-based industries, especially in the design side, were some of the hardest hit, which I think we can all remember.
Mhm.
And so it was seeing that, but then also just really that acknowledgement, like, I understand business. Um, I hate calling it my network because I really am just like invested in like my friendships, and I love being a connector. I love meeting people. I get a lot of joy and value out of it. And so I always hate saying like maintain your network, but
Yeah.
do maintain your network because it's how I have gotten every job.
Right.
um, and so it was the belief of the other side, right? That I could do something, that I was smart enough to figure out what I didn't know. So it was definitely them taking a risk on me. And me just I've never been scared um to like be like, oh, I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always just been willing to try new stuff, and I actually find it really interesting. And yeah, I can't imagine if I would have just like stayed on one track. That's just not my personality. I love it.
Right.
I love different things and new things. So I think it was part the time and where we were from a market cycle standpoint that made me move over. And then to be even more direct about it, there you can make way more money.
Hmm.
So there was the financial advantage to making a leap in for trying something new.
Sure. No, those are
Mhm.
all great points, and that
Yeah,
that makes tons of sense. So,
yeah.
when you started out in this new venture, was there anything that, well, I guess looking back, what are some of the key ideas that wish you would have known right when you took that leap or starting out? Is
Yeah,
there,
like real like way starting out. Oh my gosh.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
in development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know this is gonna sound like so cliche, like, oh, I wouldn't have changed anything. But really I wouldn't have. I think, you know, personal and professional growth happens when you struggle
Mhm.
and when things are not easy and by making mistakes. And so to be where I am right now, I wouldn't give any of that up. Because I mean, I've benefited so much from the path and the experience that I've had. And had I changed any part of it, I don't know what that would have looked like. And I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing right now, which is an amazing feeling. And had I done something, I don't think I would have been ready in the same way that I am now for taking on my own development company. And so for those reasons, I wouldn't change anything. I also know my personality, and if me now told younger me like it's going to be really hard, I probably wouldn't have believed me.
Right.
Yeah. So I wish that there was times where I would have understood that what I was going through was normal.
Mm.
How hard it was to be expected.
Mhm.
Um, and so that it feels more normalized. But again, like, that growth doesn't happen when we're comfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And let's segue that into where you're at now with
Yeah.
Tribe. So,
Yeah.
what did that look like when you decided, hey, I think I'm good enough
Yeah.
to do this on my own? What did that
Yeah.
that moment look like?
Um, so Tribe is like a culmination of many things, right? So I have all this amazing experience, got to work with tons of really great people. But there wasn't a way of me being able to be like 100% me in like traditional development offices, right? I come from this design place. I come from a really unique perspective. My company is named Tribe because I am Chickasaw. I'm a very proud member of my Chickasaw Nation. And so I think those experiences and those pieces that make me uniquely me weren't always something that I could have or bring into projects or express in the ways that I wanted to.
Right.
And so that's really what made me want to come out and start Tribe was, I wanted to come at development from more of a designer place and more of like a brand creation mindset, still while being very mindful and responsible of a pro forma and investors, but starting in a different place, which I couldn't do if I would have stayed. But I will tell you that leaving was really scary. Like very scary. It took me a year to really work up the courage and the guts to go. And honestly, I created a plan that was going to make both myself and my husband comfortable with me going out on my own. And what did that mean for both of us? And then I worked that plan for a year, right? So the day I quit, I wore my quitting outfit and
Wait,
yeah,
what is that?
you gotta wear an outfit when you quit. Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta be like, you gotta be ready. You gotta feel really good. You gotta show up as your best self. And
Gotcha.
For me, I love clothes. I love fashion. I love design, all of it. And so I had to show up in my quitting outfit, right? You can't back out.
Yeah.
But and on the way, to do that, I called my husband and I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. And he's like, no, you're in your outfit. You're doing this. Yeah.
That's right.
But I worked the plan. And so I think that that's one thing is, feel like, create a plan, know when you're going to be comfortable. There is absolutely not a perfect time to go out on your own, much like there's not a perfect time for anything. But once I left, the things that came to me, it was just, it was unbelievable how much support there was. And then the opportunities that came my way that I wouldn't have known about, right? There was no way of projecting them while I was still an employee of somebody's.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you had kind of a succession plan for yourself.
I did. Yeah,
wow.
I did. Yep.
So getting into Tribe more, it sounds like you've kind of diversified yourself from some of the other firms by bringing in these other aspects. Can we touch on those? You said one, you wanted to be design focused, which is not entirely common. And then also that you wanted to, show that branding was important for, developments from the start. That's interesting. So
yeah.
I assume that came from your background in landscape architecture, but was there any other, it sounded like when you were working at the Four Seasons and stuff like that, all that kind of came together and formed this idea to create just a completely different firm. And then how has that kind of helped you out going forward?
Yeah. I do believe it's really important. It's where I start, right? So, and I synonymously use vision and brand together. So I think where I get into like the nuance and what is different about what I do is, every project that I'm on starts with like an all-day workshop that has all of the stakeholders. And so it's the design teams, it's, key stakeholders in the community or the city, it's, my team, it's any other ownership that may be involved. And we really start to curate a shared vision for the project. And one thing that we drilled down to in all of the ones that I've participated in, even when I'm a consultant for people and they ask me to help them create this on their projects, one thing that I like to kind of get it down to is, if somebody were to tell their best friend about their time in this place, what would they say? So what do we want them to say? So we can start to understand like, what's our aspirational language we want to use for this project. And this isn't just about like really fancy mixed use projects, right? I love industrial projects. And so is the industrial like outcome that there is no other place that I could be this efficient with my business. Right. So it's something, it is something that is meaningful to who your user is going to be, or who the people are going to be that visit this place. And so we start, we drill down throughout the day of generating that, sentiment. And then we really start to create, and this sounds weird, but a persona or a personality, as if our project was a person. And so
Okay.
what is the tone of voice that we speak in as this project? What are some of our key attributes? And what that does, especially when you're all together, is it starts to create a roadmap of what are the really critical decisions. And so as we apply a pro forma, we're going to know what are the sacred components that we can't touch, because that's how our user identifies. And what are the things in which we can modify without having a significant impact? Because again, I mean, every development project can't just live in the clouds. I want all of my stuff to be built. And so what are those elements that we really need to strive for? And it makes decision making so much easier. And it makes pro forma management so much easier, because you can't get rid of X. And so you better go figure out how to be efficient somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's a big, unique proposition of my company, that's how we work through projects and we think about projects. And yeah, it's been able to be really successful. And like I said, a lot of my quote unquote competitors, hire me to come in and help them establish that. So.
Wow. So you come in, you decide what, basically a vision for
Who are
the
you?
project.
Who are you,
Yeah.
project? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's basically your sentiment. How would you describe this an outsider describe it? And then you create an avatar essentially around this vision, and then that's interesting.
Yeah.
And how long does this process typically take for y'all?
Well, that's one day. Okay.
That's one day. Okay.
It's one day. And we get down to those. I would say, I've got strategic partnerships with branding firms that I really trust, who understand my process and have done this with me a lot. And quite honestly, like, mirrors how they think about creation of brand. So start to finish, we usually will have, a brand completed within 3 months of starting. And the reason why it needs to be quick and it needs to be out front is because it will be the guiding pieces for the architecture teams, right? And it'll start to integrate into interiors. And so, you build a brand, it's more than a logo. It's color palettes, it's narrative, it's how you speak to a potential user. We use a lot of kind of like this, not that. So like in a project that I did, we're historic, but not stuffy. We're elegant, but not pretentious.
Okay.
And so there's ways that you can kind of like start to do that. So, like, well, does the brand start to really reflect those pieces? Because we know that this is our user group. And then the design team gets to start making decisions based on those elements as well. And most architecture teams, I mean, all of the ones I've worked with love this, have really embraced it. And because it's so much about their philosophy. And again, I come from their world, so I know, like, this is meaningful work that we do in the beginning that allows us to create place, and not just space in which people occupy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like the architect, they always want to have a peek into the brain of the owner, the developer, and this is your way of showing them, your vision, without giving them, the roadmap. I mean, you're kind of giving them an idea, a notion, and then they build around that, and I'm sure that that helps.
And
tons.
they're part of creating that vision, right? And so I think, one of somebody had asked me, another developer, they're like, well, why would, well, can't you just have your architect like create it? And I said, well, if you don't know what to ask for, how do they know what to create?
Right.
And so this is a way of figuring out, what are we asking for? So, because they'll keep drawing you things. I know.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Until you say we got it right. But they don't know if you can't verbalize, or you can't tell them exactly what it is. And to be honest, so many times you don't even know who you're serving in the market. Like, you don't know why you're delivering the product. other than your company wants to do an office building, you know? So yeah, it's really beneficial work.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it. I mean, so during that 3-month process, is it an iterative process? Is it
Oh
back
yeah.
and forth, or is it okay? I didn't know if
Yeah.
it was kind of a linear uh, after that month or that day,
Yeah.
and then
No, I'm a big believer in like, I never want to reveal. Okay. So, because if you show it to me and I'm not happy, you're going to be disappointed. And quite honestly, vice versa. If I come up with this amazing idea and I like do this big reveal for you and it's like a lackluster response,
yeah,
nobody needs that, right? So like make it iterative, take feedback along the way. It's, that's why it's so inclusive in that day. And all of those people are still involved throughout all of those iterations in the creation and outcome of the final brand product. So
hmm is the architect ever involved in that process, or they just
always.
brought it? Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. They're really crucial. I'm getting ready to do a kickoff of a new project next Friday. And there's a million emails going back and forth between myself and the firm that I use for some of my branding work and the architecture team, like figuring out like what's the content that we want to use that day, knowing that all of us have to participate in the project, right? And in the
right,
day. But it's that facilitation of making sure everybody feels included and that there's voice, everyone's voice in that room is heard that day.
gotcha. So I assume before that day, they kind of give the client kind of gives you an idea of maybe what they're going for, so you're prepared, or is it just uh,
Sometimes, um,
sometimes?
sometimes not.
Okay.
We usually have, if I'm consulting for a client and it's not one of my projects, it's I will do a lot of kind of like investigating beforehand. So, what space do they typically occupy within the development world? Who are some of the competitors that they normally have? Or if we know it's a particular product type, we'll do research around their competitive set in that same asset class in the same area. So that we're coming in with some information so that we can really start to understand like, how do we set you apart? How are you going to, really differentiate amongst this competitive set? And so we can start to arm them with some of that data.
hmm
But then a lot of it is really discovery. It's lots of questions, lots of really fun workshop kind of exercises that make you be like, wait, aren't we talking about real estate? Why am I talking about like, what car would I drive? Okay. If this project could be a car, what car is it? And
yeah,
so, we ask a lot of those things, which are like fun and kind of quirky. But it's to make us stop thinking like developers um, and think about it in a completely different context so that the outcome will be greater than what you
right,
typically get.
right. Looking at it from more of the end user's point of view, and seeing how
Always.
yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So I think you've touched on this maybe briefly, but why do you think branding is so important for your developments?
So, um, I mean, so I think branding, first and foremost, you have to know like who is your audience, right? And who are you serving? But it really tells you like who you are in the market. And every time I kind of get to like an end place where I think we're getting really close to like having an established brand for a project, I think there's three pillars that I always look for. So it needs to be reflective. So the community around it says, well, I'm already a part of this. Like this is me, right? So it needs to have that reflective quality. It needs to be inspirational. It can be inspirational in many ways, like through art or some type of like public engagement and whimsical moments and surprise moments. You have to have that inspiration kind of in there to keep people excited. And again, that can take many different forms in terms of inspiration. And then it has to be aspirational. So while you feel like you're already reflected in it, there's an aspirational quality to, I want to be a greater part of this community. Or somebody maybe that you're recruiting to be one of your tenants who isn't a part of the community. It's like, this is amazing. What they're doing is really incredible. I want to be a part of it.
hmm
And so as I evaluate the brand and the project, to be fair, again, because I use all of them like as a cohesive whole.
Interchangeably, yeah,
Yeah. Is that happening? Like, are we reflecting who we're serving? Are there inspirational moments within the project? And do we feel like this is enough to attract somebody to want to be part of it?
okay,
Um, I will say the biggest mistake that all developers make, myself included, which I have changed a lot, of how I approach it when you go into communities, because all the easy dirt is gone. It doesn't really matter where any of us are.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this is densification, gentrification, whatever you want to call it. I highly recommend approaching them like anchor institutions approach development. And anchor institutions, what they do is they do a lot of listening and finding out what services need to be provided to the community. And that does not mean that you have to do it at less profit. It doesn't mean that you have to like give anything away as a developer, but by understanding what the key needs are of the community that you are surrounded by, you will be far more accepted. What we typically do is show up to public meetings with really pretty drawings and say, aren't you excited for what we're going to build?
It's so amazing, right? Yeah.
And we wonder why everyone's just like, there's like pitchforks out, and we don't understand why they don't love our vision too. But it's because we haven't taken time to really understand and hear what is important to them. And it usually is not all that difficult to incorporate or find, and every developer would love governmental entities in which will help you find some of those services and providers to be part of your project.
No, that's a good point. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with being, a part of the community to begin with, being active in the community. And I'm kind of curious about the aspirational piece that you mentioned, and how can you provide some examples on how you've done that in previous projects, how you've built that piece of that pillar?
Yeah, I think so a couple of different scenarios. So in a past project I worked on, it was a mixed use project. It was a really great mixed use project. A lot of so there was hotel, office, there was ground floor retail, it was an entire block, and then really curated retail that surrounded in the rest of the block. And when I say aspirational, even the office users, there were a couple corporate users who left their headquarters to come to be part of the project because they understood that the actual development itself was an amenity to their employees. And so I think, when you look at it from an aspirational sense, it's, are we creating something to that point that somebody would leave their existing location that isn't really all that far away to come to be here because what we're creating is so great. So I think that that's one way that you can look at aspirational. The other side of aspirational, so like actual tenants and wanting to be involved and wanting to locate within your project, right? That's one side of aspirational. I think the other piece is from a recruitment standpoint of those employees that work there and want to work for whether it's retail or the office users or the hotel, is that it's a really cool place to actually work and you're proud of that environment. And third, you've got community members who are supportive of and want to keep returning and being part of what you're creating. And so I think that there's a bunch of different ways you can think about the aspirational component. So for this, there was like a lot of integrated art, but we held sections for annual like graffiti walls to be done. And everybody wanted those spots. And so you knew
awesome.
that if you have that kind of, we provide this space and this is, gets changed out every 2 years. And everyone wanted their piece there because it got a lot of eyeballs and it was just cool. It was a cool space. Yeah.
It's unique. Yeah, definitely. Yes. Wow. So kind of coming back a little bit to your start in real estate development and thinking back, what do you think is one of the most common roadblocks for people to actually take that step? Is it the uncertainty or
yeah, it's I think there's a lot. I mean, there are high barriers to entry when it comes to real estate. I did not come from a wealthy family. I clearly did not take a traditional real estate path. And so I think that there's a lot of roadblocks just because, one of the best sayings ever is that you can't be what you can't see, which is why it's so important for me to always I respond to everybody, or I try to respond to everybody that sends me LinkedIn messages wanting to meet or chat and talk to me about my path and about my journey. because I don't look like what the regular path is. And so I think, just believing that if you feel that you have a unique opportunity within the development world to provide something, then I think you chase it.
Mm-hmm.
And each of us are very unique, right? Our experiences are our own. There's nobody like the two of us sitting in a room, right? So
Right.
you have to believe in your ability to provide something, and then really just be steadfast in, well, be approachable, take critique, right? Do all of
Right.
those things. But don't lose your own voice in that. Know why you started and what you thought you wanted to offer. Let it evolve. But it's, I think one of the biggest roadblocks is just you don't see a lot of diversity within development.
That is very true.
Yeah.
That is very true. So definitely have a chance to diversify, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's probably what's helped make you so successful, is that you realize your own brand and you've been able to use that to, to your benefit from a
Yeah.
business standpoint.
Yeah. But I'll say, I mean, the biggest mistake that I made in my career was not listening to that. Right. And trying to fit into like this different mold of what somebody, like private equity look like or what development look like, and not being true to the uniqueness of me. And so it took a while for me to kind of like deprogram and think like, no, this is why I'm doing this. I know that I have value to offer, and believing in that. And so I think you have to listen to the critique, but be mindful of who you're really like accepting, like what you're accepting.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you, even after you had started your own firm, did you feel like you needed to still fit that mold of private equity, or?
Oh no.
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 You had your quitting clothes on, you
I
were done.
did. Yeah. And then it was my new job clothes. Okay.
Right.
No. It's funny because I'll say that to people and they'll be like, Ashley, you have always just been you. And so I know you can only change yourself so much. And which is, why you'll end up meeting this place where you either like go to a different organization in which you feel that you get to express more of that, or you start your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And because I guarantee you, if you don't feel like you're fitting, they don't feel like you're fitting. It's reciprocal. It's not one way. It's just is what it is. But friends will be like, you've always just been you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely something that I think you have to be mindful of. There's times in my career, I think one of the good tests, to kind of see if it's true, like if there's truth behind some of the things that you're hearing, is like, have you heard them before? Did you hear it in another job setting? Did you hear it in a personal situation? But I feel like for me anyway, I didn't really hear the same thing, right? Like it always kind of felt different until I was ready to hear it, and to do something about it. And I think that that's
Right.
true with everybody. I think you receive the information when you are at a place in which you're capable and ready to do work on yourself to improve areas. But again, just, senior management, owners, does not make them right. So be critical of of the critique that you get. And that's especially for any of the women that may be watching and listening to this. I think that, it's a little different. So just, be mindful of what you accept.
Right.
And, I always say that, management isn't just top down. It's like management happens in every direction. So you'll be managing
Definitely.
up, you'll be managing to your peers. So, just be critical of where the information comes from.
That's great. That's awesome. So looking forward now, what do you see your legacy and Tribe Development's legacy going forward? Say I was to, look you up on Wikipedia in 100+ years with,
Yeah.
with advances in science, make
Yeah.
it
I'm
to
still doing
120.
my own entry. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
what would we find? What would they say is your legacy?
Yeah. Well, the hope, right, is that I've created projects that people love, and ultimately that other developers benchmark. So I think that's always a goal for me is, I want my projects to be ones that others want to replicate and to get good ideas from. I do it to other people. I hope they do it to me. Um, And, but ultimately, just building on what we were just talking about is, I want to be not a great female leader. I just want to be a great leader. I want to help inspire other people. I want people to see that there's different paths for getting, whether it's like development or something else, but like expressing their own unique perspective through what they do. And, I want to do it just unapologetically as a strong woman in the industry.
That's a lot. That's a heck
Yeah.
of a Wikipedia entry.
Thank
Wow.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
You should
No
probably type
pressure.
it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Never put pressure on myself.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate all your time here. I wanted to give you a couple minutes, just to give the listeners a chance to, you know, figure out where to find out more about you, and obviously I'll include some links. But
Thanks.
yeah, if just give us a couple of spots that
Yeah.
you're most active.
Yeah, as I said, I do try to respond. So if there's anything that resonated with somebody or they want to learn more, I try to be really responsive to folks. So best outlets for me, obviously you can find me at tribedevco.com. And then same on Instagram. I am over 40. I can only manage Instagram. That's it. That's what I got. And so
Yeah,
it's at Tribe Devco. Pretty active on social, on Instagram. I really just love it. I think it's a lot of fun. And then LinkedIn is just Ashley Stiles.
perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
And
Thank
like I
you
said,
so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.